The police car's tires had barely stopped rolling when the HOA president, Victoria Steele, blocked its path. She held her clipboard like a royal scepter, yelling at the officer through his open window. "He's illegally occupying that office space." The entire neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. Everyone assumed she was right. They always did. That is, until I stepped out holding the ownership deeds for the whole complex, the very ground they were standing on. "That's right," I announced. "Every last brick and every square inch of this place is mine." She thought her threats, her bogus citations, and her manufactured authority would make me run. She picked the wrong guy. I know exactly how to dismantle a greedy HOA. Have you ever had a run-in with an HOA that thinks it's a small government? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because this war of wills is just getting started. 6 months. That's how long Elena's office had sat untouched, like a monument to a life cut short. I couldn't bring myself to disturb it. The mug she'd left on the drafting table was still there, a pale brown ring of old coffee staining the ceramic. I paid the rent on time every month, even though walking in here felt like trespassing on a sacred memory. Today was meant to be different. Today I was supposed to box up her life's work and try to find a way to move on. The office complex was modest. Just 8 units in a row that Elena had called charming, while I saw it as practical. She leased Unit 5 for her architecture. Practiced 3 years ago, back when forever felt like a real thing. I was on the floor of her office, surrounded by her unfinished plans, trying to understand how you pack away a future that never happened. Her pencils were sharpened and arranged in a perfect row, just as she always left them. Sticky notes dotted. Her monitor, "Call Garrett for lunch." Johnson meeting at 3. Don't forget anniversary dinner Friday. That last one felt like a physical blow. We never had that dinner. The stroke claimed her on a Thursday dot. I was holding one of her business cards when I heard them loud, angry voices just outside. Through the blinds, I saw a woman in her late 40s marching toward my door, flanked by 2 security guards like a general leading an army. She radiated the kind of unshakable confidence that comes from never being told. No, the sound on the door wasn't a knock. It was a siege. "Open up. This is Victoria Steele, HOA president. You are in violation of multiple community regulations." I opened the door to find her standing there, clipboard in hand, her eyes sweeping the office behind me as if she were documenting a crime scene. The guards looked uneasy, like they knew this was about to go sideways. "Mr. Blackwood, I assume?" Victoria's voice had the sharp, accusatory tone of a principal who'd caught you red-handed. "You cannot be in here. You have not registered with the HOA. You have not paid the mandatory business operation fees, and you certainly have not received approval for whatever this is." She gestured vaguely at the office. Her eyes had a strange intensity, like she was seeing things the rest of us couldn't. "Ma'am, I've been paying rent on this unit for 3 years. My wife, Elena, had her firm here until—" I couldn't say the words. 6 months on, they still wouldn't come. Victoria's expression remained solid ice. "That is precisely the issue," she said, producing a thick document. "Your wife failed to register her business with the Homeowners Association. She was operating illegally, and now you are perpetuating that violation. We have already changed the locks and posted a notice." She shoved the paper at me. It had Elena's name on it, but I'd never seen it in my life. A cold dread began to form in my stomach. I never got a notice. Elena never mentioned any HOA registration. Victoria smiled, a thin, predatory curve of her lips. "Mr. Blackwood, there are many things about this community you are clearly unaware of. The HOA possesses certain special authorities under local ordinances. We have dealt with difficult situations in the past, and we have always managed to secure an understanding." The way she said "difficult situations" made my skin crawl. Right there, I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer, Jake Morrison, Jake, can an HOA change the locks on a commercial space I'm legally renting? Jake's voice came through loud and clear on speaker. Not a chance, Garrett. That's trespassing. They would need a court order or direct permission from the landlord. Who claims they can do that? I looked straight at Victoria, the HOA president. She says they have special authorities. There was a short pause from Jake. That's not a real thing, Garrett. Someone's feeding you a line of bull. Victoria's face turned a blotchy red. She snatched the phone from my hand and ended the call, an act I'm pretty sure is a crime in itself. Mr. Blackwood, she said, her voice dropping to a low threat. There are people in this community who remember things about your wife, things you might not know. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., we are holding an emergency HOA meeting. You will understand then why you don't belong here. She turned, then paused, looking back with that same disturbing intensity. Some people believe they can just walk in here and take what isn't theirs. But this community knows how to protect itself from those who don't respect our authority. And Mr. Blackwood, we have methods that go far beyond simple eviction. After they left, I collapsed back onto Eleanor's office floor, her sketches and dreams scattered around me. I was trying to make sense of what just happened. The sticky note on her monitor, "Call Garrett for lunch," stared back at me. For a second, I could almost hear her voice in my head, telling me not to let some bully push me around. But something Victoria said kept replaying in my mind. People who remember things about your wife that you might not know. What could that possibly mean? Elena was the most transparent person I had ever met. Then it hit me. I suddenly recalled a conversation from a few weeks before she passed. She had been on edge, more stressed than I'd ever seen her. When I pressed her on it, she'd mentioned critical papers in our home safe and said, "If anything ever happens to me, you have to open it." At the time, I brushed it off as her being overly cautious. Now, sitting in her empty office with Victoria's threats echoing in the room, her words felt like a premonition. My phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Blackwood, your absence from tomorrow's meeting will be considered an admission of wrongdoing. We have already held the vote. You have 24 hours to vacate this community permanently. Do not force us to use more persuasive methods." I stared at the message, a hot mix of anger and confusion boiling inside me. Persuasive methods? What kind of is this? Whatever was going on, whatever Victoria Steele thought she knew about my wife, I was going to find out. Elena always said the truth has a way of surfacing, especially when someone tries to bury it deep. Tomorrow's meeting was about to get very interesting. I arrived at the community center feeling like I was walking into a well-planned ambush. 30 residents were crammed inside, every single one of them staring at me like I had personally wronged them. Victoria stood at the front, her clipboard of lies at the ready, flanked by a projector screen displaying the title of a PowerPoint. Blackwood Violations, a Threat to the Community. I spotted Deputy Martinez in the corner, speaking quietly to another man in a suit. His presence felt off, more than just keeping the peace. He kept scanning the room as if he were looking for something or someone. Victoria began her presentation with all the zeal of a prosecutor angling for a promotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you see here is a pattern of blatant disregard for our community standards." She clicked through her slides. Photos of my car parked 2 inches on the line. Time-stamped pictures of me bringing boxes into Elena's office after dark. There was even a photo of me on my phone near the community fountain. "Mr. Blackwood has consistently violated noise regulations, parking rules, and most disturbingly, has been operating an unsanctioned business on our property." Crowd murmured in agreement. I felt like I was watching a deranged play where I was the unwilling star. "Furthermore," Victoria boomed, her voice swelling with false righteousness, "Elena Blackwood's so-called architecture business was in direct violation of our commercial activity bylaws. She failed to remit her business income to the HOA as required by our revenue sharing agreement. The outstanding penalties and late fees now total $50,000. I almost laughed out loud. $50,000? For what? Elena was renting a small office, not running a criminal enterprise. Victoria clicked. To her final slide, a document that looked official but felt fake, with Elena's name highlighted. This is why we have been forced to take this emergency action, to protect the financial stability of our community. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of 30 pairs of eyes on me. Miss Steele, I would like to see the legal statute that grants an HOA the power to impose such fees. I have paid commercial rent for this space for 3 years, and Elena never once mentioned a revenue sharing agreement. Victoria's smile was as sharp as broken glass. Mr. Blackwood, this HOA has comprehensive oversight over all commercial activities within our jurisdiction. We have special municipal backing that grants us powers beyond those of a typical homeowners association. I saw Deputy Martinez lean forward at this, pulling out a small notepad. The thing about being an engineer is you know when someone is trying to sell you a fantasy. I would like to see that municipal authorization, I said, my voice steady, because my lawyer has confirmed that commercial properties are governed by entirely different laws than residential ones. For a split second, Victoria's composure faltered. Mr. Blackwood, are you questioning the authority of this democratically elected board? The deflection was slick. She made it sound like I was staging the coup. And that's when Elena's words came rushing back. If anything ever happens to me, you have to open the safe. It wasn't just a morbid conversation. Watching Victoria wave around fabricated documents and talk about agreements Elena supposedly signed, I knew there was something more. I need to step out for an hour, I announced. I have to review some documents of my own at home. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Mr. Blackwood, this is a formal hearing. You cannot simply walk out. I was already heading for the exit. Miss Steele, this isn't a court, and you're not a judge. I can do whatever I want. I'll be back. I could hear her shouting behind me about contempt and further fines, but I was already in my car, my heart racing. The safe was in our bedroom closet, behind Elena's winter coats. The combination was our anniversary, June 5, 10th, 18. With shaking hands, I turned. The dial dot, of course. Here is the third part of the rewritten script. The lock on the safe clicked open. On top of a stack of documents was an envelope with Garrett, written in Elena's familiar, elegant script. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter was dated just 2 weeks before she died. My dearest Garrett, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably facing down Victoria Steele. I need you to know, everything in this safe is legitimate and legally ours. The property deed at the very bottom will show you the truth of what we own. Victoria doesn't know about it. She will try to claim power she does not have. I was preparing for this fight. All my love, Elena. My heart hammered against my ribs as I dug deeper. There, at the bottom, wrapped in a protective plastic sleeve, was the original property deed. Not a copy, but the actual document, complete with official seals and signatures. According to the deed, Elena and I didn't just rent Unit 5. We owned the entire 15-acre property, the commercial strip, the residential lots, and the community center where Victoria was currently holding her sham trial. Everything. The HOA wasn't our superior. They weren't even our equals. They were, in essence, our tenants, operating under a management agreement Elena had put in place years ago. I sat on our bedroom floor, clutching the deed and Elena's letter, feeling as if she were right there, protecting me one last time. My phone rang. It was Victoria. Mr. Blackwood, your unauthorized departure has been officially recorded. The board has voted. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. And Mr. Blackwood, she added, her voice laced with venom, don't force us to take more aggressive measures. Elena couldn't protect you forever. The casual cruelty of her words, using Elena's name, extinguished my grief and replaced it with ice-cold fury. I looked at the deed, at Eleanor's letter, at the undeniable proof that Victoria was a fraud. "Miss Steele," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "I believe there has been a profound misunderstanding about who has authority over whom here. But don't you worry. Tomorrow, I will make sure everyone understands the hierarchy perfectly." I walked back into that community center holding the deed in a plain manila folder, but I kept it closed. Sometimes the best move is to give your enemy enough rope to hang themselves before you kick the chair out from under them. Victoria was still at it, now presenting a slide with a detailed financial chart of my supposed crimes. The residents were fixated on her every word. I slipped into a back row seat and watched the performance, morbidly curious to see how far she would push this lie before I brought the whole theater down. As I was saying before Mr. Blackwood's unapproved absence, Victoria announced, firing a glare at me. "We have documented proof of systemic violations going back 18 months. She clicked to a new slide, a surveillance photo of me taking out the office trash. Improper waste disposal outside of designated collection hours. I had to physically bite my tongue to keep from laughing. She was presenting taking out the garbage as a high crime. This woman was either completely unhinged or the most committed con artist I'd ever met. Then, a trembling hand went up in the audience. It was Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who lived next to the community center. "Mrs. Steele," she asked, "I do not understand. Mr. Blackwood was always very kind. He helped me with my groceries when my husband was ill. Why are we treating him like this?" The question lingered in the tense air. For a moment, a flash of genuine menace crossed Victoria's face. "Mrs. Chen," she said, her voice dropping into a tone that was soft but carried the weight of a lead pipe. "Perhaps you've forgotten what happened with Mrs. Patterson when she chose to question the board's decisions. It was so unfortunate she had to move away so suddenly for her health." Very suddenly. The entire room fell silent. Mrs. Chun shrank back into her seat. Victoria was actively intimidating a senior citizen in front of 30 witnesses. My anger spiked. I couldn't let this go on. "Miss Steele," I called out from the back, "I'm still curious about the legal basis for these financial penalties. Could you please cite the specific municipal ordinance that allows an HOA to demand a share of a commercial tenant's revenue?" Victoria's eyes lit up, as if I'd just walked right into her trap. "Mr. Blackwood, since you insist on questioning the authority of this board, maybe you'd like to learn about the special ordinances that govern this land." She clicked to a new slide, which showed an official-looking document bearing the city seal. "This community operates under a special municipal charter that grants us broader regulatory powers. We are, for all intents and purposes, a micromunicipality with our own enforcement authority." It sounded convincing if you knew nothing about the law. Deputy Martinez was writing furiously in his notebook now. "That's fascinating," I said, rising to my feet. "Because as an engineer familiar with zoning and municipal law, I've never once heard of a homeowners association being granted the power of taxation." Victoria's smile flickered again. "Are you suggesting this board, which was elected by your neighbors, does not have the authority to protect our community?" It was another brilliant redirect, painting me as an enemy of the people. "I'm not questioning the residents, Miss Steele. I'm questioning your legal right to fabricate a $50,000 debt for a small architecture office." She stood up taller, using her clipboard as a shield. "Mr. Blackwood, I believe you fail to grasp your position here. You think your grief gives you a pass to ignore the rules. But your wife understood the consequences. She learned that lesson in the weeks before her unfortunate incident. Perhaps she simply didn't have time to share her education with you before her stroke." The room gasped. She had gone too far. "Miss Steele," I said, my voice ringing through the quiet room, "you have fundamentally misunderstood something very basic about law power, and reality. Tomorrow morning, I will demonstrate for everyone exactly who stands where in this community. I walked to the door, then turned back. And Miss Steele? Elena taught me a lot about bullies. The most important lesson was to never show your winning hand until the final bet is on the table, of course. Here is the fourth part of the rewritten script. The next morning, I returned to Elena's office with a clear strategy. The best way to expose a fraud is to give them a grand stage and a long leash. I unlocked the door with Elena's spare key, the one she kept under the fake rock by the entrance, and went inside. I sat at her desk and opened my laptop, making sure I was clearly visible through the large front window. If Victoria wanted a confrontation over unauthorized access, I would give her one. I was paying rent. I had a key, and more importantly, I had a royal flush in my briefcase while she was bluffing with a pair of twos. It didn't take long. At 9:15 a.m. sharp, I heard the wail of sirens growing closer. I watched as Victoria marched across the parking lot, clipboard held high like a battle standard, and threw herself in front of the arriving police car. I couldn't hear her words, but her frantic gestures toward my office window told the whole story. Deputy Martinez stepped out, trying to calm her down as a small crowd of residents gathered. Drawn by the drama. This was my cue. I walked outside, briefcase in hand, projecting the confidence I was just starting to feel. "Officer, that man is trespassing," Victoria shrieked. "He has been given lawful orders to vacate and is refusing to comply." The crowd leaned in, expecting to see me in handcuffs. Deputy Martinez turned to me with the weary look of a man who'd seen this all before. "Sir, can you explain why you're here?" "I can," I said. I opened my briefcase and removed the deed. Handing it to him, "I'm Garrett Blackwood. I am the legal owner of this entire complex. Every square foot of land you are all standing on belongs to me and my late wife." The silence was absolute. Victoria's face cycled through disbelief, denial, and fury in about 3 seconds. "That's a lie." She sputtered. "Those documents are forged. The HOA owns this property." She began shuffling through her own papers, waving them around as if that would make them true. Deputy Martinez examined the deed, his eyes tracing the official seals and signatures. His expression remained professional, but I saw the flicker of understanding. "Ma'am," he said to Victoria, "this appears to be a completely legitimate, original property deed. It lists Mr. Blackwood and his wife as the sole proprietors of this 15-acre parcel." I couldn't resist. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about the chain of command, Miss Steele. You see, the HOA doesn't own this place. You're not the landlord. You're the management company my wife hired to handle landscaping and trash pickup." The crowd stared at Victoria, who looked as if she'd been struck by lightning. Her composure finally shattered. "You're lying." "Officer, he must be committing fraud." That's when her phone rang. She answered, her hands shaking. I could hear a man's panicked voice on the other end. "Jake, get here now." She hissed into the phone. "Bring the special files. I am not letting him win this." She hung up and glared at me with wild, desperate eyes. "You have no idea what you've just done. This is much bigger than a simple property dispute." Moments later, a black BMW screeched into the lot. A man I assumed was Jake Wellington got out, clutching a leather briefcase. For a lawyer arriving to save the day, he looked terrified, his eyes darting around the crowd. "Victoria," he said, his voice tight, "we need to talk, privately." "Fix this, Jake," she demanded. "He has some deed the cops think is real." Wellington, sweating profusely, turned to me with a look of forced bravado. "Mr. Blackwood, I represent the HOA. I have documentation here that supersedes your claim." He opened his briefcase and produced a thick document. "Your wife, Elena, signed a property transfer agreement 2 months before her death, selling her full ownership stake back to the community. Your deed is obsolete. The words knocked the air out of my lungs. Elena sold our property without telling me? My confidence vanished. I took the document. Her name was at the bottom, next to a signature that looked like hers. Victoria's triumphant. Smirk returned. You see, she crowed to the crowd. He didn't even know what his own wife was doing. Just as my world was tilting on its axis, Deputy Martinez's radio crackled to life. All units, be advised, we have a federal warrant execution in progress. Subject is Jake Wellington, attorney at law. FBI agents are en route to your location. For immediate apprehension. The color drained from Wellington's face. Jake Wellington, Deputy Martinez announced, stepping forward. You are under arrest on behalf of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Wellington dropped his briefcase, papers scattering across the asphalt. This is a misunderstanding. He stammered, but his face was a mask of guilt. Within minutes, the lot was swarming with FBI agents in tactical vests. And Agent Sarah Chun took charge, addressing the stunned crowd. We are executing a federal warrant for evidence related to a multi-state conspiracy to commit document forgery, mail fraud, and the production of fraudulent government credentials. This HOA has been serving as the front for a criminal enterprise. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Victoria stood frozen as agents streamed into the building she had ruled like a queen. This is impossible, she whispered. We're a homeowners association. Wellington, now in handcuffs, broke. Victoria made me do it. He yelled. She threatened me. I was only supposed to make fake HOA notices, but she kept pushing for more. She forced me to forge Elena's signature on that property transfer. Elena never signed anything. She was getting suspicious of the whole operation, and Victoria said we had to silence her before she went to the authorities. The crowd gasped. I looked at the forged document in my hands, and suddenly everything became clear. Elena hadn't betrayed me. She had discovered their crimes and had become their target. Victoria stood amidst the chaos of the FBI raid, still clutching her clipboard as if it were a shield. You don't understand. She shouted at Agent Chun, her voice cracking. I have proof Garrett knew. I have emails, he was in on it. She was trying to drag me down with her, a final, desperate act of a drowning woman. Actually, Miss Steele, I said, pulling out my phone. I think everyone here should hear from my wife directly. I opened my voice memos and found the file Elena had left for me. I hit play. Elena's voice, clear and strong, filled the stunned silence of the parking lot. Garrett, my love, if you're hearing this, Victoria Steele has likely done something. To me. I need you to know I found out she's running a forgery ring out of the HOA office. Not just fake notices, but federal seals, government credentials, even diplomas. I was going to report her to the FBI, but I'm terrified she'll come after you. I've put everything you need, all the real documents, in the safe at home. Don't let her bully you. I love you. The recording ended. Victoria's face was a ghastly shade of gray. That's a fake. She stammered, her voice thin. Elena was paranoid. She was seeing conspiracies everywhere. I recorded them. All heads turned to Mrs. Chun, who stepped forward holding her old smartphone. Mrs. Steele came to Elena's office 3 days before she passed, she said, her voice trembling but firm. They were shouting. I was scared, so I recorded it from my balcony. You can't be serious. Victoria cried, a new wave of panic in her voice. You're a confused old woman. No one will believe you. But Mrs. Chun was already handing her phone to Agent Chun. Play the recording from 3 days ago, she instructed. The audio was scratchy, but Victoria's voice was unmistakable. Reporting us won't just hurt the HOA, Elena. It will destroy this community. And your husband, Garrett. Well, people who disrupt community stability sometimes face very serious consequences. You wouldn't want anything to happen to him. The crowd murmured in shock, but the recording continued. I've seen it before. People who don't cooperate. They develop health problems, stress conditions. Sometimes they have accidents. Sometimes they have strokes. The word strokes hung in the air like a death sentence. Victoria hadn't just threatened Elena. She had named the very weapon that killed her. That's taken out of context. Victoria screamed. I was trying to help her understand. I was protecting our community. Agent Chun looked at me with deep sympathy before signaling to her team. Ma'am, threatening a federal informant is a serious crime. We will be seeking a full forensic review of Elena Blackwood's medical records. Based on this, we may be looking at conspiracy to commit bodily harm, or worse. That's when Victoria finally shattered. Elena deserved IT. She shrieked, her voice echoing off the buildings. She was going to ruin everything I built. I couldn't let her destroy this community. The words were a confession, screamed for every resident and FBI agent to hear. Deputy Martinez stepped forward. Victoria Steele, you are under arrest. As they cuffed her, she was still raving about protecting the community, her words lost in the righteous hum of justice finally being served. 3 months later, Elena's old office was unrecognizable. It was now the bustling Elena Blackwood Community Design Center. Where her drafting table once stood, young architects now collaborated with low-income families, designing their dream homes. Mrs. Chun was the new, unanimously elected HOA president. Her first act was to install a bronze plaque at the entrance to the community center. It read, "In memory of Elena Blackwood. Transparency, respect, and truth above all." The federal case was swift. Wellington got 15 years for her crimes of conspiracy, fraud, and what the judge called systematic psychological terrorism resulting in death. Victoria was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Our story made national news, sparking widespread investigations into HOA overreach and leading to new reform laws. The hardest part was living with the truth. The medical examiner officially amended Elena's cause of death to stroke, precipitated by extreme and sustained psychological duress. Victoria had, in effect, terrorized my wife to death. The design center became my way of channeling that pain. We helped over 200 families in the first few months. The fear that had once choked our neighborhood was replaced by empowerment. While cleaning out Elena's desk to make room for a new architect, I found a final letter in a hidden compartment. My dearest Garrett, it read, "Don't let my death be in vain. Use what I've left you to protect others. Turn our love into a legacy." Just then, Mrs. Chun knocked on the door. "Mr. Blackwood, a young couple is here. They want to build their first home." I looked out and saw them, holding hands, hope radiating from their faces. I folded Elena's letter, put it away, and started a new project file for them. As I began to sketch, I could feel Elena's presence, her love a guiding hand. Victoria tried to destroy a community with fear, but Elena's legacy, built on courage and truth, had proven infinitely stronger. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe to Harper Stories. Your support allows me to continue telling these important stories of justice. Thank you for being part of a community that believes truth and courage must always win.